Hello, everybody, and thank you to our third ever Credential Chats. I am super excited this week to be joined by Molly McDermott-Fallon, the Assistant Vice Provost and University Registrar from University of Cincinnati. Molly, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me.
And, I just want to jump right in with you, Molly, and, start with just the genesis story of how things got going. Cause I just really think that's a neat story for you of just how things got rolling with micro-credentials in this whole conversation at University of Cincinnati.
Yeah, so you see, we've been talking about micro-credentials for a while, and for us, it really was industry driven. Industry was asking us, hey, can you do micro-credentials? It'd be really nice if we could have this niche to take our students to UC and you educate them and they have a valid credential from the University of Cincinnati, not 120 credits, but that little niche population. And so for us, that's how it grew. It was interesting. UC is new to the Big 12. And so I didn't know this, but there's an administrators meeting in the fall that all the administrators in the Big 12 get together and we talk. And it's an amazing space for collaboration. And I enjoyed every single moment of it. And in that session, we talked about micro credentials. And it was just a really interesting conversation to have with other Big 12 Power 5 institutions to say, who's doing micro-credentials, who's not doing micro-credentials, why are you doing micro-credentials, why are you not doing micro-credentials? And in those conversations, it was really interesting to see who is doing micro-credentials and why we said we were doing micro-credentials. And the others are going, it's not a path yet my institution is going down, but it's a conversation that's being had. And that was a really kind of light bulb moment for us to say, okay, we're on the right path. This is a conversation that everybody's having. And yes, maybe we're a little further along than others, but there's other institutions that we can learn from because they've kind of already been there, done that, and we can use them as a learning vessel. And so in that space and within our own conference, it was a really cool discussion on micro-credentials.
And you kind of hinted there at that industry-driven sort of impetus, but do you mind just saying a little bit more as different institutions were sharing why they were going down this path? For UC, what was your why?
So many people don't know, but UC was the founder of cooperative education. So we have co-op, we're one of the top public institutions in co-op. We're also an urban institution, and so we service a lot of industry located in the greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, Indiana area. And because of that, it was really having those conversations with where our students are going. So our students go to GE, they go to Procter & Gamble, they go to Macy's, they go all over the place. And they were saying, we need your students to have this, or we need lifelong learning in this space. And having those conversations with industry, with our employers, of our students, really help build where we need our micro-credentials to go to say, yes, you have a Tableau certificate, micro-credential from the University of Cincinnati. It's valid, it's verified, it's all of those things that you wanted, and we can go out and give it to our industry. And so that kind of was a building block for us.
And I love that sort of student first lens that you brought to it. And it also sounds like at University of Cincinnati, you didn't necessarily engage with these new things by going straight towards doing new things, that you kind of started from a place in anchoring in what you already do well.
Exactly. We anchored in everything that we do well in our cooperative education space. Micro-credentials are really blooming from our new college. It's the college of, I've got to get it right, we just created it, of cooperative education and professional studies. And because of that new college, it really has been the driving force to say, we're going to use you as a pilot. Let's pilot you. Let's pilot from our regional campuses and then really grow in the 4-credit space. And we're also in the non-credit space as well, as we're starting to build kind of that space up and having the conversations on governance and where we want to go in the governance space.
When, as I'm sure you've observed in the digital credentials community of practice on the AACRAO exchange, that is definitely one of the hot topics. And
yeah.
I love how you use that P word. I feel like sometimes people could be very, disrupted or afraid and nervous and just downright fearful of, big change. But the pilot word can feel very safe. And a lot of people want to pay attention to it, study it. What can we learn from it as we pilot? And the other thing that I heard you saying there that I think probably a lot of other people are going to put a pin in with the AACRAO audience is the University of Cincinnati is not choosing either or when it comes to non-credit or for credit. And so, maybe you could just kind of share, the design process that got you there. And, I'm also really curious of what are some of the design questions that were asked, in the conversations that helped you get there?
That's a fantastic question. I think for us, it was having the right players at the table to say, the registrar was involved, our associate vice provost for undergraduate affairs, our associate vice provost for accreditation and curriculum operations, our new dean of the Cooperative Educational and Professional Studies College, the dean of our graduate school, student affairs. We had this big, large group that had our student information system. We had this big group together to say, let's talk about what we want micro-credentials to look like at the University of Cincinnati. How do we want this to go? What do we want to be verified? All of those right conversations you should be having early on. And for us, it was put up the guardrails. So we have guardrails up on, this is our for credit space. This is what for credit space looks like. And this is what the non-credit space looks like. And really making sure that we establish the for credit and not for credit space and establish it well before we even talk about crossover. And so in the non-credit space, we're standing up a system to help us in that non-credit space. And the for credit, we're utilizing our student information system as it exists now. So we're not doing a whole lot of development. We're not doing a whole lot of change as the information system's established. And we're actually even partnering with our diploma vendor to issue the artifact of the micro-credential. It's on the transcript, all those good things. And so the same kind of conversations going on in the non-credit space, because we want to be careful, because you're going to put the University of Cincinnati's name behind that non-credit credential. And so what gets to that point? What makes it valid enough to say, yes, you've earned a badge, an artifact, whatever you want to call it, at the University of Cincinnati in the non-credit space that we have verified.
And I have two follow-up questions. That the first one is just kind of want to clarify, when it sounds like at the University of Cincinnati, there was a very clear sense of regarding non-credit offerings. These are still university records.
Yeah. They're still university records. They're going to go into a system that we're standing up. We're also piloting that. We love pilots. So we're standing this system up. We've got some things in there. We're adding more to it. And then it's really kind of validating. The transcript will be issued out of it for non-credit. So there will be a transcript issued out of this system that'll have somebody's signature, whether it's mine or the dean or whomever's. It gets to be mine on it. But then it's really going, we're going to have crossover. So you've got this, you've got it good. We've got a record and you've got a record over here. How can we take the non-credit record and do something with it in the for credit space? And so now we're really deep diving into the prior learning assessment space that you see.
Yeah, that's really insightful stuff. And I want to go back to one word that you've used, I think 3 or 4 times now, is validation. And so what does that mean at University of Cincinnati? Does that sort of imply that there's measurable criteria that's being assessed, or what does validation mean at the University of Cincinnati?
Another great question. For us, it's building that governance around it to determine what equates to validation from us. We always jokingly use the example of basket weaving is great, good skill to use, non-credit space, but does basket weaving hold the same non-credit value per se as Tableau or a Google certificate? Does it hold the same weight and value in determining how you make the criteria equate to the validation of the metadata behind it, right? Because we don't want to just put something out there and not be used. We're doing this so it's a use, so students can use in the profession to go on and do bigger and better things or enhance their current job. And so we want to make sure that it has that weight. And so we're still in that stage of governance of determining what gets the artifact, what doesn't get the artifact, what makes it this compared to that. And so we're still in those forming stages of determining where we should go in that path.
And I kind of get the sense that the guardrails that you described, what you were just taking about, what these kind of things you're still figuring out, that it's kind of about really fostering creativity and fostering innovation,
Mhm.
and just really trying to build some fences around it to help people know what is inbounds, or maybe just
Yes,
where is out of bounds, so they can then just go crazy with what's inbounds.
exactly. I think for us, it's just making sure we contain the Wild West, right? Because for a long time, it's been the Wild West out there. Things have been going on, and we didn't have mechanisms, we didn't have governance, we didn't have guidance on how to merge these worlds together. Now we do. Now we have governance, we have other institutions to ask, we have all of the resources, and now it's saying, let's get the Wild West. My registrar heart breaks knowing that there are credentials out there, probably on someone's Excel file sheet on a desktop, that I'd like to know about, but because we didn't have a mechanism, I don't know about them. I want that mechanism. And so for us, it's getting them back into the lane to say, in a decade, and when I'm asked, I can validate to say, yes, Noah came to the University of Cincinnati, and yes, Noah completed this X, Y, and Z micro-credential.
Yeah, I sometimes joke that we definitely want to avoid it being one blue screen of death away from
Oh,
losing essential learning records on behalf of our students.
mhm.
And that's maybe is a good segue to go back to that student first lens, because something else that I heard you really advocating for is, that you made sound almost nonchalant, but to me feels like a huge shift for a lot of stakeholders. And that is that these are credentials that must be used by our learners, that
Mhm.
we're not just creating these things and issuing them in that same way, that there's an expectation that what we're building, that we're creating and then issuing, are then things that actually get used by and operationalized by the learners. And I think that's a big shift, that I, in 25 years, have looked at my transcript maybe once.
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah, so
Mhm.
so can you just kind of describe a little bit more about how you got to that place? And, especially as you were leading that shift in thinking on campus, if there were any ways of framing it for stakeholders that needed to hear it, why that was an important shift.
Yeah, it was an important shift. So for us, I'm going to take us back a few years. So in 2019, UC stopped issuing paper diplomas. We only issued electronic because we were hearing from employers to say, that's really great that they got an A in X class their freshman year. I just really want to see that they earned that degree. That's really important to me. And so we kind of took that logic that we received back in the day. We've gone back to we do paper and electronic, just in case everyone's going, oh my gosh, we went back. We went back. But those conversations were there to say, okay, we're hearing from our employers. They want that validated. They want to see that you've learned this skill, or you have this knowledge base, or you have X. And so that's kind of why we're building, like, we don't want to throw spaghetti at a wall and see if it sticks. We want to know that there's a need base there for a micro-credential and a skill that we can say, yes, the institution of the University of Cincinnati gave you that, and that you have that validated skill.
Mm. And, I'm guessing you also sort of talked a little bit about the metadata piece. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if in any specific ways that relates to this piece of this being a document, that this being an artifact, these digital credentials that get used by the learners. And if you, does the metadata connect to that outward facing storytelling for you?
It does for us. And you used a keyword there that we've been using a lot, is storytelling.
Mm.
I'll go back to our co-op. So our co-op students receive a stagnant co-op certificate saying, yeah, you went out and you learned all these great things 5 different times during your time at UC. You worked with GE, and you probably had some really cool projects, but we don't know about them and we're not telling your story. So now what we're doing is changing that to our badge to say, we can say that Noah went out to Procter and Gamble. Noah had worked on X, Y, and Z projects. This is his time frame in which he worked at Procter and Gamble, and these are the skills in which he learned. And so we're telling the story of that experience, that learning experience the student had, in a much, much better way.
I love that the Senjuju, that we're telling that story that they had.
Mm-hmm.
Molly, thank you so much for
Oh, thank
being with us.
you.
And any quick plugs of anything you have going on, or ways that people can follow up with you if they're interested?
Oh, yeah. please email me. I'm the co-chair volunteers at AACRAO in Columbus. So I'm going to give a big shout out to Columbus. I hope to see you all there. And I just want to say it's kind of a really exciting time to be in higher ed. I think it's a really cool space and where we're going. I know there's a lot of challenges we're facing, but this is a big win for us that we can help our students tell their story.
Well, thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Molly McDermott-Fallon from the University of Cincinnati. Thank you so much for joining us, and have